why the children in my town are brutally killing their parents. They called us the miracle generation. It's a well-known fact that our town has always struggled with having children. Nobody knows exactly why, but fertility problems have always been an issue. It's not like our population is dwindling. People were still born from IVF or shipped into town through government program to create families. My mom moved to the US with her parents when she was 20 years old, abandoning her family and starting a new one. After finding the program, she was paid enough cash to put her into early retirement, and all she had to do was pick one of the several guides to make a family with. I know this sounds very dystopian, and you would be correct in thinking so, but what else were they supposed to do? Children were seemingly not allowed in this town, and when by miracle they somehow allowed to exist, they lasted maybe 3 or 4 days. Mom said I was a miracle baby. It wasn't supposed to happen because women in our town were supposed to be barren. So when an entire class of babies came out of nowhere, that was the name our town named us. Miracles. I was first born, followed by my twin brother a day later, and then my sister a whole year later. I think my mom wanted to stay safe with 2 children before she tried again, and lo and behold, she had Nova. We learned from an early age that we weren't technically supposed to be existing. Scared to be a child, yes. When an adult is prodating a whiteboard and repeating the words shouldn't and impossible, you were bound to get freaked out, though the town was skeptical of us. There were those before us, babies, who were born and given names and identities and already had parents falling in love with their bundle of joy, only for each child to die one day after the other from a mysterious illness no scientist could identify. It became pretty obvious that our town was cursed. Mom told me for the first few days after I was born, she wasn't allowed to hold me in case I randomly exploded in her arms or grew 3 heads. Yes, there is a document evidence that babies have exploded or grown inhuman like limbs before dying. Mom wanted to make sure I was actually real and not some curse illusion. That went for all the babies in town. We were all taken to the hospital and placed inside some sort of quarantine room. They expected us to blow up or die suddenly, but when we didn't, we were given back to our parents. Mom used to regularly put in our birthday cards, "I'm glad you didn't explode," as a joke. She had an odd sense of humor, but I thought it was cute. I have 17 years worth of birthday cards, all saying some ridiculous passage. Happy, insert age here. Birthday, Amara. I'm glad you didn't explode. Anyways, this supposed curse came back to light several days ago when, out of nowhere, Stephen Daniel killed his parents. And I don't mean kill, like he burned the house with them in it or poisoned them with the sleep. I mean kill. According to the town newspaper, my mom is always feverishly reading the bodies were humiliated like an animal had torn them apart. I knew Steph. I've known him since we were little kids, and he lived across the road from me. Steph regularly invited me to come over and watch Power Rangers and would occasionally sing and dance to the intro. Steph loved his mom and dad. I mean, he did as a kid. I would see him playing with his father in the front yard. And when he grew up, yes, he distanced himself from his parents because being cool with your mom and dad is like so lame. see him accompany his mother to the town center to buy groceries or sitting in the front yard playing his Switch, pretending to laugh at all his dad jokes. Steph wasn't a bad person, and he definitely wasn't a victim to some sort of curse that apparently still had us in its grasp. It didn't make sense that he would just kill his parents like that. There was no motivation, no real reason for him to do that. Steph adored his mother and loved his father. The town media were radio silent except for one measly article in the newspaper. I figured nobody wanted to say what everyone was thinking, but it didn't make sense. This curse had allowed us to live for 17 years, and now it wanted to do something? And why would it lash out at parents, not kids? And why would it force the kid to kill their parents? There was one detail that jumped out of me instantly. It was Steph's 18th birthday. The exact day I knew this because he was talking about me and having a party at school. I mean, it's not rocket science, but the kid activities talked about having birthday parties on the same day. They planned brutally murdering their parents. I asked a lot of questions because nobody was making noise. I refused to believe Steph would willingly done something like this. Mom said that Daniel's case was too gruesome to tell me, so I did just digged it up myself. We're in a small town.
Finn Navoka is the son of the sheriff, so it cost me $20 and a promise to my brother to get my brother to introduce me to Finn Navoka to get into his father's office. It was very dark and daggering. I definitely felt like one of those TV detectives. The documents were still fresh in the top drawer under his desk, Daniel's. I picked up the folder, motioning to Finn to keep a lookout. He tossed me a pissed look and attempted to charm the receptionist into a conversation while I studied the autopsy notes. After skimming and reading them, I wished I could delete the information from my memory. Maria! I lifted my head, and the boy was making some very indistinct, worthy of Saturday morning cartoon. Are you crazy? Get out of there. Before I could answer, he pointed behind him, his eyes wide open. My dad's coming, he mouthed. Nodding, I stayed calm. Despite my dancing gut, I took several photos of the notes before swiftly leaving the room and closing the door behind me. It's not like Finn expressed any intention in what I was looking for, but he did sit with me on a bench in the middle of town square, a Starbucks latte balanced on his lap. So he leaned over, peeking at my phone, loudly slurping on his straw. What's the dictate? Did he kill them? I had a hard time answering without bringing up my meager breakfast. Yes, I said, staring at the photo on my screen. Mom was right. The autopsy notes were gruesome because there was barely any to perform on the autopsy. In my mind, Steph had maybe stabbed his parents, but in reality, he had ripped them apart. In the notes was a detailed description of the remains, which weren't much. A single torso and a head? That was it. Both victims were Sophia, 38, and Oliver, 39, Daniels. The image were black and white. I could barely see them, but they weren't leaving my mind. A single head and a torso? That's what was left of Steph's parents, which meant somehow he had the strength to rip them to shreds. I was already thinking it my phone to Finn, who hissed through his teeth, "Holy fuck," he muttered, passing me his empty cup, squirming at the screen. Crazy asshole. Actually butchered them? He didn't butcher them. I managed to get out, despite knowing I was in denial. I couldn't defend Steph with the evidence, which was right there in black and white, having not just killed them, but dismembered them in a way no human, even a general serial killer, could. This was more animalistic. The more I was thinking about it, the sticker was getting... It wasn't until my mouth was filling with barf and it was on my hands and knees choking up my guts that the gravity and the situation slammed onto me. If Steph Daniel had killed his mom and dad out of nowhere, was that fate going to happen to me too? It must have been the curse. There was no other explanation. I didn't dig into the rest of the investigation because I was too terrified to find out something more that I didn't want to. Murder motived by emotion, and motive is awful, yes. But can it be understood? It's been studied since records began why we kill, because when it comes to a separate force taking control of your will and forcing you to kill, that's when things are no real answer, only questions. Our town has been plagued with an invisible force that taken away our children. Could it be that we enraged it by being born? Had we somehow pissed off this all-seeing God? It was only several days later when Mom told me Steph had been taken to juvie, determined center, and didn't even get to see a court case. He admitted to it automatically. "Yes, I killed my mom and dad," were his words when he was forced out his house and his arms bound behind him, a pair of Ray-Bans hiding his eyes from the world. His words were so cruel, so unforgiving, and yet spoken with an emotionless drone. He didn't care? Watching him being swarmed by the town news crew from my window, Steph almost resembled a celebrity. The way he was shoved through flashing lights and microphones. Steph's Daniel hated attention. Usually, if he was picked to speak in class, his cheeks were bright red, and he'd stumble on his way through the passage, trying not to cry. The boy was not my neighbor. This vision of him held his head high, his movements swift and robotically as he calmly jumped into the back of the awaiting SUV. Despite seeing all this, despite seeing Steph steamily uncaringly in front of the cameras, I knew he would never do something like that. I know murderers turn out to be the most unexpected people. Friends and family, those who you grow up with and trust. But there was something about Daniel's case that I couldn't get out of my mind. Mom told me to forget about it when I started asking her questions about this so-called curse and how exactly was I born. Over dinner, and asked a few more questions before she dropped a fork onto her plate, startling my twin sitting across from me. Electricals are not allowed at the table, but Freddie was the more favorited child, so the rules didn't apply to him. It stung a little, but I couldn't blame Mom for her being obsessed with her only son. Apparently, she had been told she had twin daughters, and it came out Freddie. So he was a surprise to her. Freddie was such a surprise that he got what he wanted for his birthdays. When Nova and I got stuck with hand-me-downs, his nickname was Golden Boy because apparently he could do no wrong. I was sure if he murdered me in my sleep, Mom would forgive him and give him a candy bar. Freddie and I are fraternal twins and look nothing alike. But that didn't stop Mom attempting to dye my hair when I was little, so I would have Freddie's red locks. I have natural brown hair. While he's a redhead and Nova is a blonde, normal people would question that. But in our town, it was pretty normal for kids not to have their parents due to lengths people while it was kids. I heard rumors that Miracle Generation were created from witchcraft. But the people who spread those rumors also thought the earth was a giant tomato. It was the first time since learning about the curse as a kid did I start to actually question it. Much of Mom's distant, Freddie had already told me to cut with the questions, kicking me under the table, but once I started asking them, I couldn't stop. So much was on my mind. Steph's mental state seemed to be fine. He wasn't suicidal or struggling with having bad thoughts. At least, that's what it seemed like from the outside looking in it. It doesn't make sense. I had to ask for the third or fourth time. Well, aware I was hyperfixed on this, why now? I forked pasta into my mouth, ignoring my twin's glare. If we were cursed, why wait a whole 17 years? Maria. My mom cleared her throat, her lips pausing on the rim of her glass with wine in it. When Dad worked late, Mom pulled out the wine. We weren't supposed to tell him. What did I tell you about discussing business that is not ours? But it is my business. I said, Steph is my friend. He was my friend. Freddie had already finished his dinner, occasionally glancing at his switch. You didn't even like him. Do you remember you called him asshole? This time, I kicked him. And from the way he jumped in his seat, his eyes widening, from the fraction of a second, it hurt him. We were 12 when he stole my doll. You still call him an asshole, Freddie said, in a sing-song in his gaze, flickering back to his game. I actually played with him, and he only wanted your attention because he wanted to play with your DS. I called him a big-nosed freak. I splatted back. So did you? Nova, our more well-behaved little sister, ducked her head to hide her laughter. That's enough. Mom, who's halfway through her wine bottle, slammed the glass on the table. Her eyes found mine. Maria, if you ask one more question about Daniel's case, I will take your phone for a week. Freddie snickered, but she snapped at him too. That goes for you too. She stood up. I'm going upstairs. Whoever's on the rotary, please clean the dishes and make the kitchen tidy before your father comes home, please. Freddie hiffled like a child, folding his arms. What about Nova? He gestured to her. She was laughing. I was not, she snickered. I could tell by the sudden noise which escaped my brother's mouth our little sister had joined me in my assault. Mom didn't reply, taking the glass of wine and the whole bottle and sinking upstairs as usual. We were used to it. Every night when Dad was at work, Mom abandoned us at the dinner table and did the same usual route and she would do with us since we were little kids. Armed with nothing but wine and a candle, Mom would lock herself in the bedroom into early hours in the next morning. Then, when we were 10, Freddie and I attempted to sneak in to see what she was doing. But it had taken to the point where it was late into the night. Mom had fallen asleep on the floor and the candle was still flickering away. That night was the same. Mom had disappeared all nights, and I took it upon myself to clean the dishes. Freddie would go hang out with his friends, and Nova practiced brain dead once she was on TikTok. Mom had a strict rule. No matter what, we had to hand our phones in at 11 p.m. every night. That includes all electronics, including switches. In fact, she went as far as switching off the outlets in our rooms. So that meant no late night gaming of Mario Kart. I thought we would eventually be able to grow out of this rule, but no. We were 16 and 17-year-old, and we still had a hand in our phones like preschoolers. Freddie was, of course, the golden boy, so he left his phone and switch on the dinner table before leaving for his friend's house, which Mom also said wasn't allowed. But I guess the rule doesn't apply for him. Sitting on the kitchen countertop, frowning at my phone screen, reading and rereading through Daniel's autopsy notes, when Nova let out a shriek. The time was 11:01, which meant Nova had already been breaking the no phone rule. I jumped off the countertop, pausing to throw my phone next to Freddie's before the thought hit me. Why was my first automatic thought to put my phone down? I tried to pocket it before an impulsing pain suddenly ignited between my fingers. It felt like the electronic shock. Only lasted a few seconds, but not even that. My phone slipped from my hands, but not before the light above flickered before going out completely, leaving me in darkness. But the warm glow in the hallway outside confirmed just the kitchen had a short circuit. Mom has always been antic about technology altogether. She only got us phones because we begged. And Freddie had bought his Switch himself with cash from his part-time job. My gaze found my mostly okay iPhone lying face down on pastel pink tiles. I reached to pick it up before the same pain, this time whiffing up my index finger. Maria! Nova snickered from the lounge. I found her sitting on the floor. Her phone was in her hands. Her eyes were wide, her lips stretched into a grin. Look, she whispered. Following her gaze, my sister was grabbing her phone. I saw nothing interesting. She was watching a YouTube video, some sort of video essay on serial killers. What? It's charging. At first, I had no idea what she was talking about before my gaze found the charging symbol at the top of her screen, a lightning bolt indicating the charger had been inserted. But when I followed Nova's pointer finger, I glimpsed at her iPhone charger on the other side of the room. This still plugged into the outlet. Nova was shaking in anticipation. Wait, that's not even the best part, she snickered. Look what happens if I let go. My sister dropped the phone and the symbol disappeared. She picked it back up and the charging indicated flash. Instinctively, I thought she was playing some sort of trick, but she did it again. And then again, and I realized I wasn't seeing things. The phone was really charging without a charger. Nova, being Nova, automatically thought she had some sort of superpower. My little sister jumped to her feet and stalked over to the television, providing the screen only for nothing to happen. Then she tried the lamp on the stand and the PlayStation 4. Nothing. I admit I was kind of excited for maybe a full minute before I realized it was most likely a scientific explanation, and there it was. According to the article I found online, yes, electronic devices can charge their battery through vibration methods without being plugged into a source of electricity. What all the different methods have in common is they absorb energy that is in some sort of form: heat, light, vibration, radio waves, etc. from the external environment, then converted into energy, into electrical energy that is stored in the device's battery. Still though, according to the author of the article, it usually wasn't enough power to make a difference. So why had Nova's phone been actually charging? I watched the percentage jump from 10 to 16 and put it down to malfunction. It made sense if I really thought about it. The next day, however, did it not make sense? I was still half asleep when I woke up to my brother glooming over me. What is it? Freddie waved the phone in my face. Just messages, each one sending my gut hurtling further and further through my throat. There was a sea of gray messages from the receiver, and only 2 messages in blue from Freddie. Skin to flesh, it was gnarly. Miss Carly fainted. My mom had a panic attack. Skull completely pulverized. I can't believe I saw that shit. Man, what the fuck? There are people guarding the scene right now, but earlier you could just tell from walking in. Animal. Crazy sociopath. The living room was covered in blood like a horror movie. My guy painted the walls. There was nothing left of the wrench. They brought out just skin. There was like blue sheets over the bodies, like there wasn't even a body. I think I saw a hand or maybe a foot, but they definitely weren't attached. I don't know. It was gross. Mom wants to send me to therapy. Lol. My brother finally replied in blue. Who is this? Sheriff's son came to reply. That kid is going to hell, and I'm an atheist. I hope he gets his karma, because who does that? Wasn't he close to his pops? Joking, of course. I can't get my head around it. It took a moment for the messages to sink in, and I was out of my bed before my brain could catch up with my body. Finn, in 3 strikes, it was on my knees, choking up dust. Freddie dropped down into the bed with a hissed breath. Didn't you know that kid? He whispered. It was Finn, right? His words were finally registering. This time I did bring something up, something sour and slimy, slippery from the lips. My stomach heavily. Are you okay? No. Do you want help? I swiped at my mouth, but it kept coming out. This time, a bout of stomach lining filled my mouth. Did you check? I managed to choke out, spitting out barf. Huh? Did you check? I said, slowly spacing out my words to see if it was Finn. Oh, yeah, it was him, alright. The cops already caught him. Apparently he was trying to make a run for it. Freddie sighed. Maybe he was scared? It didn't make sense. How could Finn kill his father? He loved his dad. I barely knew the kid outside helping me with getting into his dad's office. But even then, I saw the photo frame, Sheriff Nova's desk. I saw photos of the two of them for Christmas and Father's Day on vacation, and just the two of them hanging out. In kindergarten, a boy had loudly announced that Sheriff Nova was a pig, and Finn wrestled him to the ground, almost knocking the kid out. Finn was tiny and lean kid. There was no way he was strong enough to rip his father apart. Freddie groaned. He hung upside down off the bed, twisting his head to look at me, blowing his dark red hair out of his eyes. Are we cursed? That was the first time I found myself nodding, my thoughts dizzy. But it didn't stop me from trying to talk to him. According to my mom, Finn had been shipped to juvie detention at afternoon. Until then, he was locked up downtown. Sheriff Nova was dead, so the town's reinforcement were at the point trying to find a new sheriff. The place was heaving for the most of the morning before people started disappearing. I took my chances, sneaking in with a group of parents screaming about the safety of their children. While the lady behind the counter was trying to calm them down, I took my chances sliding through the door at the back and into the cells. I expected guards, but they were nowhere to be seen. I figured the mess with the parents had given me the perfect distraction. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside was the flickering light, but it wasn't the light above. In front of the cells was an empty desk with a laptop set up. Stepping closer, I realized it was the laptop screen, which was flickering automatically. When the bolt above shattered, I jumped. Maria, Finn's voice remembered Steph's, and an emotionless drone. When I twisted around, I glimpsed at the boy standing with his arms wrapped around the bars, very silent of the limbs. Finn liked horror movies, so I wouldn't have been surprised if he was jokingly reenacting a certain scene, though that would have required him to have ounces of emotion. I'm not sure what I expected, but this wasn't it. I thought Finn would be hysterical, screaming that he was innocent, that he would never kill his father, but what I was looking at was the face of a murderer, or at least half of one. His lips were crusted over a small smile, and yet that smile had no emotion, just like Steph. Finn's eyes were shaded with a pair of Ray-Bans. These ones look more expensive, clashing with the simple short sleeve tee and jeans, both of which stained with his father's blood. When I opened my mouth to speak, his arms dropped to his sides. Aren't you gonna wish me a happy birthday? The wiggling leg of a python spider creeped outside my spine, and I found myself taking a step towards him, my breath in my throat. It's your birthday? He nodded. I turned 18 yesterday. Wish me happy birthday. Happy birthday, I whispered, and the words tangled in my tongue. Did you? I killed my dad, Finn finished for me, in the exact same tone as Steph. No empathy, nothing that he suggested he regretted it. What he had done. I was seeing an identical expression to the sheriff's son. He didn't move, staying earnest, still his arms frozen to his sides. I pulled out his lungs and cut off his head. I skinned him to the bone and dumped his guts in a toilet bowl to hide them. But I shook my head, tears stinging out my eyes. You didn't mean to. Finn cut me off, sliding through my spiraling thoughts. I felt faint, like I was going to throw up. When is your birthday again? He asked with no hint of curiosity. The question was simple, and yet it was enough to send me back into cold concrete walls. When is your birthday? Why? His expression didn't waver. When is your birthday? June 23rd, I answered, with a breath. Finn didn't move for a moment, slowly slipping off his Ray-Bans. I thought he was going to do some dramatic reveal, like he was some character from a non-film, and he was going to describe all the details, just what he had exactly done to his father, but instead his arms slipped to his sides, the sunglasses dropping to the ground and revealing where his eyes used to be, now twin carved of pulling darkness, which somehow still felt glittering of life. I couldn't stop myself. I was taking steps towards him, peering into the dim light of his cell, and yes, I wasn't seeing things. Finn's eyes were gone, plucked from his skull. From the trauma around them, the removal had been forceful. Happy birthday, he said in the same dull, toneless drawl. When I drew back, he bent down and felt for the glasses, grasping hold of them and sliding them back on. For the 23rd, I mean. Finn pressed his face against the bars, this time with a maniac giggle, which came out of nowhere. His expression was still vacant, yet his lips split into a grin of a man who had murdered his father in cold blood and did not care. I'm looking forward to you joining me. That's when I left him. But before I could shut the door, his chilling words followed me. And your brother, Finn laughed, turning hysterical, almost inhuman. I could hear the sounds of him slamming his head into the bars. Don't forget your brother. I was immediately dragged out of the sheriff's office and lectured by my mom for a whole 2 hours. But sitting in my living room with my mom yelling at me, with a half of the predicament surrounding her, I couldn't get Finn's words out of my head. It was when Mom was gesturing to me, her lips moving, but no sound was coming out, when I snapped it out, only to be slammed in another lecture of privacy and illegal trace. I ignored all of that, cross-legged on the couch next to Nova, who was pretending to be on her phone, and decided to finally open my mouth. I think it's the curse, I said, cutting into my mom's third or fourth threat regarding my phone privileges. That is when the room went silent. My mom looked startled the moment before her, shaking her head. That's not it. What are you talking about, young lady? Do you understand the severity of what you have done? Yeah, Maria. Freddie spoke from across the room, like Nova. He was doing a bad job of pretending he wasn't loving every second of me being bombarded. I can't believe you would do something so stupid. He drifted off. Oh wait, didn't you break in to steal those documents last month on Daniel's case? He smiled, pickered. Now I'm pretty sure that was also, like, illegal. But I mean, what do I know? I'm just a high schooler. I don't sneak into the sheriff's office when I'm supposed to be at school. I glared at him. How do you even know that? You go through my phone? He shrugged, comfortably adjusting himself on the cylinder. Your password is 4 zeros. A toddler could bypass it. I don't know if it was stress of what happened with Finn or my brother's dumb grin, but I already was lunging across the room to, I don't know. He's taller than me and more built. He could squash me if he really wanted to. So what I thought of going to be in a fight turned me into trying to cause some damage with him, and Freddie just shoved me off with a scoff. I did manage to hit him in the nose, but that was where Mom came in, pulling us apart and going into mom mode. quote-unquote mom mode is when she got really mad. Nova decided she no longer wanted to be a spectator and wandered into the kitchen. I was sent to my room, of course, and Freddie was lectured for antagonizing me. Several hours later, he appeared at my door with a half-eaten donut and a cup of cocoa and half a signed apology, which was his attempt of letting me know he was scared I was going to hurt myself. I took the donut and cocoa and told him to go away. He did, after standing there for a while, looking like a kicked puppy. I closed the door on his face when he made a point to try to make me feel sorry for him. I wanted to tell him about Finn, but he would just tell Mom and get me into trouble. So I found myself with information which was driving me crazy. My 18th birthday was approaching, and more kids were turning on their mom and dads. And after Finn, it was Addie, and then Jason, Serena, and then Carla, all which had turned 18 weeks between each other. I thought the town was going to start freaking out and calling those who were left monsters, instigating that we should have never been born. But to my surprise, there was barely any news coverage, and it almost became normal to hear about yet another kid being sent to juvie detention. June arrived, and the day crept by faster and faster, until it was eve of my 18th birthday, and I had found myself standing in the bathroom, my trembling fingers wrapped around the razor blade. Every time I thought of actually doing it, slicing to my flesh until my wrists were dripping pools of scarlet, and I was struggling to breathe, I couldn't. So I dumped the razor into the trash and left the bathroom, only to run into Nova, wrapped in a pink bathrobe. My little sister looked like a giant marshmallow, hiding between scattered blonde curls. Maria! Nova was grinning ear to ear, as usual. She grabbed my hand and squeezed them. Do you remember what we did as kids? From the look on her face, I knew exactly what she was talking about. When Mom went to bed, or she was at work on our birthday eve, the three of us would scout her room for presents. And we had grown out of this eventually. But every year, Nova insisted on each one search. It's not like I could refuse when my sister already had a tight grip on my arm and yanked me to my mom's room. When I stumbled inside, I found my brother on his knees under Mom's bed, drifting through boxes and bags. I was surprised Nova could drag Freddie into this. Considering every other year, he rolled his eyes and bid us debut, calling Nova a baby. Now, though, he was just as energetic as he was when he was a little kid. He used to hush us over and turn it into a game. I would take one corner and Nova would take the closest, and Freddie would take under the bed because he wasn't afraid of the monster under the bed. For a moment, I considered just walking away and saying we'd been stupid and acting like children. But I did want to forget about reality of turning 18 and possibly murdering my family. In a way, I guess I wanted to be a kid again. So, just like when I was 5, I wandered over to the furthest corner and I looked for presents, which I knew didn't exist because Mom gave us cash every year inside our cards. Even though it was fun searching and having the childish magic come over me again, the thrill of pulling things aside and dwelling inside boxes for hidden treasures, dolls we wanted, or the newest game console. To make Nova happy, I was shoving a few things aside, finding myself smiling. Mom was always bad at hiding our presents. I was about to make the comment when Nova squeaked in delight. I found something! When I twisted around, she was already partly inside the closet, one foot sticking out, and her head buried in Mom's clothes. It looked like she was grasping into something. Freddie, who had crawled out of under the bed straight up, shooting at me. Really? His eyes said, aren't we a little too old for this? We are, I mouthed. His grin transported back to me to when we were 9 and the two of us were collectively found 5 wrapped gifts and had spent an hour shaking them to figure out what was inside of them. But there was also a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. The two of them managed to heavily look out and looked at a large box. I joined them. Slowly. Any idea what it is? I frowned at the box. The two of them were struggling to get a proper hold of it. It was huge and almost the size of the closet itself. When Freddie and Nova had managed to balance it, the three of us stepped backwards to take it in, and immediately something cold slithered down my spine. First, it was the state of the box. Old and cardboard was rotting. Nova shrieked when a mountain of bugs crawled out the flap. Looking closer, it looked like a box of toys or dolls. But then I squeaked. The box was open. It had been open a long time, and the more I looked at it, the more progressively sicker I got. There was something tincturing. The cardboard, the old red paint, the flaps, and inside the thing itself. I was suddenly aware of things happening way too quickly for me to understand. A blur of movement to my right, which was Freddie dropping his knees and barfing everywhere, and the Nova figure scrambling out of the room. I could hear screams. I could hear my brother retracting, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the front of the box, because on the front of the box was me, Maria. I was seeing a photo of me smiling widely and colorful words printed on the box saying, now grown to full size, Mom said, certified. The printed word on the box looked like a different language, though I could still read it. Child TM. Have you ever wanted your very own child? Well, now you can. Just pull out the cord and you have your very own son/daughter. I was stepping forward when something moved. Frankie yanked me back, but I was dwelling inside my mother's closet to find a much newer box. This one was unopened and occupied a full-grown college-age guy peeking into a plastic bagging. This time I saw the cord, like an umbilical cord, connected to the thing inside the box, which was asleep. Its eyes were shut. Freddie, I said, it's time to go to college. Before Freddie could see it, I shoved it back, stumbling my heart in my throat. I was frowning at where all the blood was on the second box, staining the bottom where my brother grabbed my hand and yanked me back. Before I could fully register what was going on, he dragged me downstairs. I think he was trying to get me out of there. But then he stopped, sort of freezing in place. When I followed his gaze, I found 2 birthday cards set up on the panel piece. They were labeled in Mom's handwriting. The purple one was mine, the pink one was Freddie's. I opened mine, and instead of $20 notes slipping out, I found myself staring at a countdown being reflected into my face in red light. 59, 58, 57. Below that, Dear Maria, I'm so happy I met you. I was able to call you my daughter. I found you at the age of 17, but you have given me lifetime of memories I will cherish. You will be running out very soon, and like the other moms, I don't want to see you go. I am supposed to be giving you back tomorrow, but we have to each make a pact. With every child obtained, every mother, father agreed that sending you back to those people would be terrible. Giving you another mom would break my heart. Sweetheart, I have heard your biological mom has never stopped searching for you, and trust me, she won't find you. So, I'm not going to give you back. I do support the company I got you from, but I have always wanted a child. And this town cannot have children. I have lost too many inside of me to be hopeful. Happy birthday, my beautiful daughter. Goodbye, XXX. I'm not sure what emotion I felt at that moment, but I finally understood why Finn, Steph, and the others killed their parents. I was wrong. There was a motive. Rage. What the fuck? Freddie dropped his card, his eyes wide. We need to get out of here. We need to get out of here before whatever this thing is, it's going to blow up. My brother shook me. Are you listening? We need to get Nova and get out of here. Going to blow, I thought dizzily. Had Mom planted a bomb? There was no time to find it. No way to get out. I was nodding along with my brother. Finding Nova was the hardest part. Who had disappeared? When it hit me like ice, cold water, Finn standing in the cell was his eyes carved out of his skull, and Steph wearing Ray-Bans to cover his eyes. Every other kid I saw always wore sunglasses, was hiding their eyes. With the countdown reflecting onto the wall and Freddie screaming at me to find our sister, I wandered into the kitchen, pulled open our mom's prized knife drawer, and picked out the sharpest thing I could find. It had driven me crazy seeing the sheriff's son multiple face. Why had he done that to himself? Why he would kill his father and then carve his own eyes? Part of me thought it was the curse which had taken over them as some sort of reward, but I was wrong. Of course I was wrong. Finn Navoka didn't scoop out his eyes because he was crazy. He carved them out because he had gotten that exact birthday card, that countdown. And somehow he had known, just like me, as I stuffed my sweater sleeve into my mouth. The bomb was part of us, digging the blade into my eye and jerking it to the ankle to sever it. I screamed into my sleeve, managing to choke out through sobs, begging my brother to do the same. The countdown was still in my head, and if I concentrated, I could still hear it. The beep, beep, beep of the thing sandwiched inside me. It could have been either eye or both, but I didn't have time to guess. I was on my knees when I managed to scoop out my eye with the teeth of the knife and then my fingers. Then the beep stopped. I pressed my face into the kitchen floor and breathed in and out before using my sleeve to chuck the blood pool into my face. My vision was severed, and I was pretty sure I was going to be blind. But it was better than becoming blown into pieces. Freddie was already in front of me, his eyes wide and confused, already clumsily grasping for the knife to do the same. We're okay, my brother said in a hiss. He was already following my lead biting onto his sleeve and hovering the knife over one of his eyes. Nova was in the doorway. I could see her shadow, and just seeing her, I knew she was trembling, too scared to come near either of us. I opened my mouth to try to reassure her, while hoping Freddie sever what was inside of him. Before, pop, I heard it burst, an audible popping in my ear. Nova screamed behind me. Before, something warm hit my face, warm and red, coating my eyes and cheeks. When I swiped startling red from my eyes and face, I found myself glimmering at scarlet, dripping from the walls and slick on the floor and countertop. Everything I reached out for my brother, who wasn't there anymore. The birthday card which I had opened is still on the ground, and I could see my mother's message, and 18 years worth of birthday cards came over me, which one was saying the exact same thing. I'm glad you didn't explode. Whatever my fake mother did to get to me, I don't care. I don't care for an artificial ground freak who was born at 17 years old. I've already raided my kitchen for the best knives I could find, so I can find my mother and father and kill them. Why the kids in my town are brutally killing their parents. I was created by Child TM to be a daughter. There's not much you can do when you're locked up inside a slaughterhouse facility disguised as a juvie detention center with a children way past their expiration date. But after being sent away to a place with guaranteed death, like the rest of the kids in our town, it's not like I wasn't expecting it. Come back to life inside a dollhouse ran by a psychotic fake mother was pretty crazy too. But the next part, the piercing red light reflecting the countdown set me stumbling back. I was seeing my brother's death, which continued to haunt me back in my mind every waking minute of the day. I was seeing intense red coating my eyes in my face, choking my lips, his blood covering me. His last words were caught in a shiver breath he never exhaled. I could feel it again, a wash of warmth hitting me all at once, and the shrill scream of my little sister. My twin was dead. I watched him get murdered by the countdown, by our own mother. But this time, that time countdown that killed my brother, pinpointed to the sheriff's son's forehead, Vin Navoka, who had been one of the indigenous kids brutally ripped his parents apart, and the catalyst to find me out what I really was. That I existed to parents that told me they birthed me in a town that could not have children. Panic hit me, and an overbearing wave, and my legs buckled, my hands instinctively going to clam off my ear. I couldn't watch it again. The pop of flesh coming apart and splattering everything and it's individually staining me. How could I hear that rhythmic beep sound stinging in my skull, which ended with me swiping piece of my twin from my face and trying to calm our hysterical sister. I had half of a mind to turn and run and abandon Finn, but I forced myself to stay in front of him and rest my hands on his shoulder. Alarms were still screaming, and the hallway was filled with red lights bathing the sheriff's son's haunted face in an overlordly glow. Standing in a juvie detention uniform, Ray-Bans shielding his eyes, and he almost didn't look real to me. "That's me," he said softly, his lips curving into a smile and trying to be reassuring when I could tell he was terrified. His body was trembling beneath me. Was that me?
Finn hissed out with a breath when I couldn't bring myself to answer. When I was imagining wiping his blood, which was thick over my eyes, I had to blink rapidly, make sure he was real and standing in front of me. I could see him, his head slightly inclined, sunglasses dropping off his face. In my mind, Finn Novoka was already dead, already dripping from every wall. Maybe time was going faster than I could catch up with. In my brain was struggling to register his death. Hey, Earthton Maria. Finn's voice sounded odd, like ocean waves. Am I tripping, or was that me? No, Finn whispered, shaking his head, his tone dropping into a frantic hiss. That's not my separation. What we need to focus on right now, the sheriff's son whispered with a chilling cry, is what the heck was that? Despite the alarms, the intercom continued its motion-tone drawl, reassuring the other kids everything was okay. Despite guards thundering down the hall, please make your way to the finishing room, where you will begin your final days. For a disordering moment, I wasn't sure if he was talking about the countdown remaining of him, the so-called expiration, or the other Finn we just encountered. Yeah, a lot of things were happening at once. Between the replica of my brother, who just murdered his potential buyer, and the other, Finn Novoka, who'd just been dragged away, my head was spinning. We could question that later when he wasn't 53 seconds from exploding and becoming one with the walls. Part of me wanted to go back to Freddy, who had been thrown to the ground by the guards, but I had to focus on Finn and not get caught. Gasping hold of him, I pulled him further down the hallway, tightening my grip on his wrist. The hallway ended on a set of double doors, which were locked when I tried to open them. Fuck. I turned to Finn. I could only give him a helpless look. I couldn't help him. That countdown was reaching the 20s, dropping in the late teens. He had seconds. Somehow, the boy was using that precious time to get us somewhere safe. What are you doing? I couldn't resist a cry, gasping hold of him, trying to batter the doors down and focusing on the boy to look at me. Finn was sweating bad, but he didn't look scared. If anything, he almost looked at peace. I almost believed it. Until I remember his ear pierced, meditating his emotions and turning his brain to sludge. When I thought of all hope was lost, which it practically was, the mechanical lock on the door flashed green, a robot voice saying, "Access granted," before it swung open. I half wondered if it would let anyone in. Maybe it was another record room or something other finishing room. But then I saw private entry sign. How did you... I didn't manage to finish my sentence before the boy dragged me inside with him and slammed the door behind us. Now that we're behind closed doors, that was when Finn started freaking out. Maybe it was a proxy thing. If the everything were too far away, they stopped working or started to malfunction. That was what I figured when the sheriff's son stumbled over himself, his hands going to his hair and clawing it down. There was a maniacal twist to his expression, a newly awakened desperation. To get that thing off of his ear. Get it off of me. He managed to get out of his teeth. His voice had a sharp cry. I realized he wasn't talking about the countdown. It was almost as if
Finn Navoka had broken from the magnetic trance of the metal things glued to his ear and now was fully aware of what they were and that they were stuck to him, that they were quarterling his thoughts, puppeteering him. "Do you hear me?" He blindly reached out for me, scratching at my face. Finn let out an anesthetical cry through his teeth when the device flashed green for a moment before settling back to red. For a dizzily second, I drank in my surroundings, which were drastically different from the facility itself. The hallway and the recording room had been one big facility for the real thing, for what I really was expecting. A slaughterhouse for kids passing their expiration date. Not exactly big metal cages where they held us like cattle, but close enough. Slumped with my back against the door, I realized I was sitting on cement floor which was wet. And when I lifted my hand, which was pressed down on warmth, I glimpsed pulling crimson between my palms and fingers. Above me was a flickering light, and thankfully it only illuminated our faces and my surroundings, evicted with an eerie glow. The rest of the room was drowned in dark, and for once I was grateful for the observation swallowing up what I was pretty sure I didn't want to see. I was on my feet when the countdown on Finn's head reached 10, then 9. Somehow it was slowing down, or maybe I was going crazy. Maybe my brain was struggling with registering certain things and taking everything around me. "Dad," Finn surprised me, speaking through a sob. He grabbed my shoulders, his fingernails dipping in. When I tried to pull away, his strength forced me back against the wall. I thought he was reverting to a boy who ripped his father apart, but no. "Why did you..." His head jolted again, the earpiece flashing purple, but Finn fought it, tightening his grip on me. "Do this to me." "Hey," I spoke with a hiss, blurting out the only word tangled in my tongue. I was going to lose him, and I was spending my last moments with him severed with his own mind. "Wake up. I need you to wake up, because I don't know what to do." I shook him, but his expression was contorted.